yeah, here is our interview with Andrew Horowitz.
Who's a real professional. A
Yeah.
real professional musician who lives in New York, who works with real professional musicians.
Homeboy's verified on Twitter.
And we're making 69 jokes, so give it up for Andrew Horowitz coming right up. Woo. Hi, everybody. Welcome back from our brief intermission there. As most of you know, unless it's your first time, what comes after something new is something borrowed. And today we've got a very exciting guest on. You might know him as the Green Tide keyboardist and writer of Tally Hall. You might have heard him on, well, God, any number of things. Your credits are sprawling.
There's too many.
But
Too many.
We've got probably other important things that I'm glazing over. We've got Andrew Horowitz on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. And we're all the way
Yeah.
from Brooklyn to Michigan.
All the way from
All
Brooklyn.
the way from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. I'll always talk
So-
about music, you know. I have plenty to
Hell
say.
yeah. And you get to talk about not your own music and use canned plug lines about your current project. You get to
Yeah. It's excellent. It's great. Glad to be here.
What? So what album did you bring in today? What album do you want to talk about?
So when you asked me about this, I'm a bit of a music nerd, so I have so much music that I love, and this random album popped in my head that I haven't listened to in about 10 years, and it is Jars of Clay, Much Afraid, which is an album that I don't think anyone will ever come on your show and talk about, because it's not a very cool thing to talk about. And I remember it being like super important in my formative music years for some reason. And I know, actually, could I just dive into this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes.
So I would get this like DVD magazine every month, and it would have like basically a town or something. I forget what it's called, but the magazine was called. But you could go into different shops and stuff, and they had different artists playing or different reviews by different artists, and that's how I discovered Jars of Clay. I had no idea they were a Christian band. Didn't know anything about their previous work. No one in my circle ever bothered with Christian music or any of that. But I just like really loved the 30-second clips they gave me from Much Afraid, and so I went out and bought the CD and listened to it on repeat ad nauseum, and it became just like one of my, I guess I was like middle school or something like that, or high school, like beginning of high school. Like there was a period of time where I was obsessed with Much Afraid. So it's really awesome to like revisit, and I can see why I listened to it at the time. And it kind of, even though it's a little bit far out there, I used to like love like Live and Soundgarden and Chris Cornell and Stone Temple Pilots. Like those were the types of bands I started listening to when Green Day and all that stuff when I was listening to my own. Like I wasn't listening to what my parents were feeding me. So it kind of, I think it bridged the gap between that and like later years when I liked Nick Drake and Sufjan Stevens and the soft-spoken singer-songwriters. And I think Jars of Clay kind of occupies a space where it is acoustic, but it also is like very sophisticated, like I guess rock.
Nice. Yeah, that's, I was listening to it this morning on my drive into work, and I was sort of surprised because I think I had this idea in mind of what Jars of Clay sounded like, and it was very, very different than like when I was listening to it than what I thought it was going to be like. I was not expecting like interesting chord movements and like soft-spoken lyrics and like just because like you really don't think of like when you think Christian music, you don't really think like weird chords and like interesting things. Like I don't know, I feel like a lot of Christian music has become like really homogenized in the way that it sounds. Like it has a very specific sound.
Well,
and,
yeah,
like,
Nick, what's the Christian music progression that you like to talk about
what I
from
was
church? It's like
yeah, no,
1-5-6-4.
I
That's it.
played church guitar for like years, and it's like G, C, E minor, and D. Like that's with the occasional A minor in there. That's pretty. And if you wanted to get real fancy, you'd put a capo on the 3rd fret and then do the exact same chord shapes. Like that's like that was my entire experience with it, and I didn't really think much of it. But when I listened to this, you mentioned that it was like bridging the gap between like this punk rock and then like into like Sufjan Stevens and Nick Drake, and like I absolutely hear that, like how that would help you to get there.
Yeah, it was an accidental find. I still like. I don't talk about this album for some reason. Like when I revisited this a few days ago, I went through some of the catalog, and I stuck with them for like one more album, and then for some reason I was like, I don't need to listen to this band anymore, and I haven't thought about them in like I guess over 10-15 years or something like that, you know.
So in your adolescent mind, like Jars of Clay made like 2 or 3 great albums.
Then they were completely done. But I just listened to like skim some of the newer stuff, and it's actually like still really sophisticated, and I've never been a lyric guy, which is a weird thing to say for a songwriter, but yeah, like my mind just works music.
It's a little strange.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So we should play a clip from this album to introduce people to it if they haven't heard it yet. So what do you think would be a good place to start to sort of like introduce what Much Afraid, like where on this album do you think is a good jumping in point?
Oh man, maybe Fade to Gray. I don't know. What do you guys think? That one just seems a little more up tempo, and it's got some harmonies, some unexpected twists.
I definitely think that would be a good place to start. So we're gonna drop in a clip from Fade to Gray.
Like, kind of like an intricate driving beat. You get orchestral a lot of harmonies, crazy chord progressions. Yeah, it's all kind of there. I wouldn't say that's that's kind of actually sums up most of that album. It's all over the place and sonically, and yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's interesting. I had never, to my knowledge, because pre-internet, I can't exactly tell you what I was listening to ever. To my knowledge, I had never listened to Jars of Clay before, but be it power of suggestion or otherwise, I kind of felt like when you briefly described this album as you were like guilty pleasure parentheses Christian band playing pop, but with like really interesting harmonic movement and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if I was projecting, but it was exactly sort of how this thing hit me. As at first I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely like, I wouldn't have known it was a Christian. So it's not Christian music, right? But it's a Christian band, and that's how they were identifying. And it's not beating it over your head at all. But it was like, oh yeah, this is like poppy, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Exactly,
like,
yeah. That's the reference.
But then some like really interesting, surprising movements in it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and his voice is like, I think really unique, and especially in like that field at the time of like Christian gospel music, like in like the early 90s, or I don't know. I guess I wasn't really cognizant at the time because I was pretty young in the mid 90s, but it's like, thinking back, like this is not what I remember that kind of music sounding like. So it was sort of a breath of fresh air, even though it was, almost more than 2 decades later of like when this album came out.
Yeah, it's like 21 years. It's crazy. What I read up a little bit about the history because I had no idea. And one of the things, so they had a hit on their previous album a couple years prior, and that broke them into like the mainstream. They had a lot of mainstream success with that, so they were touring with like huge bands, and they became a Christian. They were like a Creed or something, where like they crossed over into the mainstream, but they were still like respected in that field. And then apparently the singer like heard his voice or something, and he went into a deep like depression and wrote the whole album in this like really sad melancholy state, and that's why and basically isolated their entire fan base with like an album that was completely different from their first album.
Yeah, I was reading up on that a little bit, and it sounded like their first album was like more, I guess, like traditional like rock music, and then I think people were expecting that for this one, and then it just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel like being a Christian or not, it's like a stigma that they'll never really escape, unfortunately. But they don't really talk about, I guess, Jesus very much on the album, and it's just like if they had marketed themselves a little differently, who knows where they would be.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and this Nick was saying that the sound of this album, we talked about the previous album, that it was not maybe what people were expecting, and I saw that this album debuted at number 8, I think, on like the Billboard Top, 100, and 8's really, really high, and it's really interesting that that's how big the, I guess, hype maybe for this release was, and because it was maybe a little bit more progressive and different from what was expected from a band, going in the mid 90s, that it didn't quite hit home. It in now where everything is fair game, we're like, wow, this is cool, I like this, but it wasn't hitting the mark for what was expected in that era.
You could say it was a little ahead of its time, I guess.
Yeah, I think they were. Yeah, and they're still around to doing their thing apparently.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think we should take another listen. What's another song that you think would be?
Should we play the single? I don't know if it's necessarily one of the best, strongest songs, but it's probably worth looking at the single. It's more of a return to their what they were expected in the rock thing and what they're gonna push to radio. And that's Crazy Times.
All right. So here's a little bit of Crazy Times.
That's the single. I see how that was the one they were betting on. Like it kind of feels like that.
I think it's got that acoustic chord progression that's very much like, I don't know how to do it without singing it like an idiot, but it's like it's got the acoustic is very definitively like playing each the chord, and it's like sort of repetitive. It's
got a 4-chord chorus that heavy guitars, the whole 90s rock thing is in full front.
It's like stripped down, just acoustic right at the beginning, and then the drums kick in, and you're like, yeah, oh, I feel it so much.
Yeah, that's like another thing that I noticed. I was like, it does sound very much like a product of its time, like just in the way that it was recorded, and like the way the acoustic sounds, and like the way the drums sound. It's like, oh, okay, like I could easily see them like on a bill with like Third Eye Blind, maybe.
Yeah, and then one of the guys in this group produced some work for a bunch of One Republic is one of the groups that he did production for, and it's like, okay, I see that, I get that.
Yeah, it's like Pink, Ariana Grande. Like he's had a huge career. He wasn't in the group, but he was.
Oh, sorry.
He played I think it said he played all the drums and some guitars, and he was definitely instrumental in the making of that album.
Yeah. He did work on it, I guess would be yeah. So what we like to do, because it makes us feel weird, and feeling weird is good, is we like to make ourselves and other people really subjectively rate these albums when they're done talking about it. In some weird, and it can be on whatever scale you want to rate it out of, any numbers if you want to use numbers or something else, but some weird arbitrary way to rate this album. What do you give this album?
Oh wow. I want to say an 8.2, which is pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah, there's definitely some songs in here that I press skip on.
That's a B-.
But overall, like I think there's also some creative like highlights to the songs that have stuck with me for 20 years, and some really beautiful moments. So maybe maybe I could be even more generous with it, but maybe I don't know. That was my first instinct, so let's give it an 8.2.
Hell yeah!
Sounds
What do you
good.
guys think?
I thought a lot of this was really pretty, and I was pleasantly surprised because I wasn't sure what I was really getting myself into, and like Overjoyed came on, and I was like, oh, this is like emotional and subtle, and like I actually really really dig it.
Yeah, Nick loves Suff Jan, so it really gets in there.
Are you familiar with Phil Keaggy? Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. He's another
Check him out.
He's another like Christian artist, but he's also like a phenomenal guitar player. And so he kind of did some music, I guess sort of like this, where it was pretty Christian stuff, but it was like is like if Jimi Hendrix is in a Christian rock band.
Okay.
But that's sort of like a thing that I really enjoy is like when Christian artists can break the mold and like kind of get into more of the mainstream with like, because like it doesn't have to be all homogenized. It can be interesting and emotional. I don't know. Yeah, I really dig this record.
Yeah. I think we should play him out with one more clip before we get into the final segment of the show. Nick, you were saying that one of these songs really stuck out to you. What do you?
The first track, Overjoyed, I enjoyed quite a bit. I was overjoyed. Listen, the lowest hanging fruit.
That is the high quality humor that all of our 1,000 subscribers want to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, Overjoyed. That's the one that really stuck out to me. All right, here's a little sample of Overjoyed from Jars of Clay on their album Much Afraid. We will be right back for some brews and chit chat. I'm a 90s
brews and chit chat
yeah,
with Nick and Andrew
in the morning.
Generally, all of our, meaning the people who are on the show's favorite segment of the show, Something Brewed, where we get to have a beer and hang out. Today, in honor of Mr. Horowitz, we are drinking Brooklyn Summer Ale, brewed in New York.
Right in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Or kind of like Williamsburg. It's like Williamsburg, Greenpoint area. Yeah, it's right near my place. I was saying they carry this basically at every single bar in Brooklyn, and in the city there's always a Brooklyn brewer. There's a Brooklyn ale on tap, and yeah, it's kind of, I like it. I'm not a beer connoisseur. I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, this will actually. So I've liked a lot of Brooklyn stuff that I've had. They've only been in Michigan for 3 or so years now, and it was a really big release. It was like when Deschutes came to Michigan for the first time. All these bars had posters up of, "Hey, we've got a Brooklyn Lager now," and all the other stuff. But Brooklyn Lager is the one that sort of was the flagship of what I've saw on draft around here. I have not yet tried this pale ale. That's their summer ale. So let's give it a taste, right? So I mean, it looks refreshing. It's like straw colored. It's clear. It looks like lawnmower beer, which is a great thing.
Okay, cheers.
Nah?
That's nice.
Yeah, no, it is refreshing. It's light, which, like, I feel like in Michigan, like, you kind of get this reputation of, like, there's all these breweries here, so you got to be drinking, like, all the fanciest shit. And
this is pretty chill.
You don't.
It's a little spicy in those hops, but, like, just, I feel like this is what is the word? Crushable.
Absolutely.
It's funny, in Brooklyn we have like the brewery that came here was Founders. Founders is everywhere. Every bar I go to, there's some sort of Founders, and it's awesome. And sometimes I'll see a Bell's Oberon or something on tap, but it's a rare occasion. But yeah,
Well, I'm gonna have to talk to.
What?
Never mind. Yeah, no, that's a nice beer. So it's our pleasure to have you on the show, and there's a couple things I think we're interested in asking you about, your life and your experience. So you went to U of M, right? You went to school not too far from here in Michigan?
Yeah, I was to school in Ann Arbor, and formed Tally Hall while I was there. I studied music composition, and I stayed in Ann Arbor afterwards because it was cheap and we were touring all the time anyway.
Nice. And so what? Moving from Ann Arbor is, while a relatively big city in Michigan, has this big sort of town feel. Moving into the city, going to New York, what's been like sort of the biggest difference?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, so
Okay.
New York was I've been coming to the city since I was a little kid, and I knew what to expect. Michigan was more of a culture shock for me when I got there.
Okay.
And I remember getting on the plane. Actually, when I went to orientation at Michigan, I got on the plane and someone sat next to me, and they had happened to go to my high school like 20 years earlier, and they're like, you're gonna meet all sorts of people here that you've never seen in your entire life, like all sorts of attitudes. Like I guess my high school was a little bit. It was a little bit homogenized. You got the same type of person, but yeah, Michigan was like a culture shock to me. People were nice all of a sudden. Like in New York, you get attitude all the time. And yes, but yeah. Anyway, the transition back from Michigan to New York was lovely. But also,
so
yeah.
when you were touring with Tally Hall, the question that I like to ask my friend, like this question originated as just a thing I like to ask my friends who are musicians at parties, but then we've done it with some of our guests on the podcast, and I've realized everyone has a story for it so far. When you were touring, like what's like one unique, like crazy thing that happened on the road? I'm sure every day wasn't normal out there.
Oh man, it all kind of blurs together. There were definitely stories. You meet every type of person. You go through every type of experience. You don't really realize how tough touring is until you do it. It's not a fun. It is fun to play shows, but shows are 45 minutes, and the rest of the day is a whole nother thing. Do I have a good tour story that I could share?
No pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I like, is it PG?
We're
we have an
explicit.
explicit rating on iTunes, so feel free to.
You can say pretty much anything. We'll judge you for it, but you can say it.
One story that I don't know why this came to mind, but there was a show we played in Chicago, I think, and afterwards I'm like remembering as I tell it, so I hope it's appropriate. Maybe it's not even a big deal. We stayed in Caseyville, Illinois after. I remember that, and it was the last night of tour with a band called Speak, and we just got goofy, really really drunk. We like usually on tour when you're done for the night, you're like, we weren't partiers. We were like, shit, we gotta wake up by 7 a.m. and get to the next town, so our next city. So we would go back to the hotel and hang out and pass out. But this night we went all out, and someone got a little too drunk and threw a bunch of furniture in the pool during this party. It was a Motel 6. I remember that. we were sponsored by Motel 6 one tour, and they just allowed, like, we stayed at Motel 6 every night. Some of them are really nice. Some of them are just the worst.
I was gonna say, I didn't know that Motel 6 had pool.
Yeah, this one had a pool, and so they had thrown all this furniture, and we're like, none of us knew this had gone on. We were just like chilling in the room, like doing things, and all of a sudden like get a giant knock on the door, and it's like 3 police officers, and we're like, fuck, like we have, substances. And anyway, I was like feeling bold, and I confronted the police officers, and they picked me up and threw me across the room. I was like bleeding, and I was like, what the? I was so I was like outraged that this had happened. And they're like, everybody here, like they're like, y'all need to leave immediately, or you're all spending the night in jail. And basically watched as we packed up and left town. It was really sad, actually. And they followed us to edge of town. And that was the last night of tour with this band, and we didn't see them after that. That was it. That was our farewell. The next night we were in like another city, and they were back home. But yeah,
ended on a high note.
Really high note. We almost all got thrown in jail. We're like, well, I was kind of feeling bold. I was like, do we really need to play the next city? Like we
could just cancel it, guys. We could just.
So that's when you reluctantly became a rock star and got the hotel room story because somebody else did it, and you were like, yeah, fuck it.
I mean, it's a pretty tame story probably compared to like a lot of bands, but then again, like a lot of bands.
I don't know. You tried to fight a cop.
Yeah, I did. I just tried to fight a cop. I really did.
It sounds like a John Mulaney stand-up bit or something.
Everybody was like surprised, but for some reason I was just feeling bold. I was like, let's do this. Let's do this.
Let's throw down.
And so then the one last thing that I was really interested in was, we talked very briefly earlier about your long list of credits of what albums and songs you've appeared on and done work on and stuff like that. And really, this is this might not be the best interview question. I'm just wondering, like, what's that like? Like, are you really interacting with like the artist whose name is on that song, or are you just like, yeah, I show up, I play wicked piano, and then I hear it on a track months later? How's that for you?
It really depends on the artist and the project.
Depends on the artist.
The last big album I'm on is Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer, and without saying too much, she was around, and she's great, super friendly. Her people are very warm and open, and is a lot of very creative atmosphere. I didn't spend too much time with her. That's half of it was done in Atlanta at their studios, and half of it I was in my home computer sending them ideas. The stuff that actually wound up in the album, I did in Brooklyn by myself.
Nice.
So depends. Then there's another artist, Jadena, I work with on Epic, and with him I spent a lot of time with him, and he's very involved with the process, and so it really depends on the album.
Nice. So we really live in the future, and you can just never even be in the city where it's happening and get it done.
Yeah. Like home recording technology is so amazing now that you can do everything remotely almost.
Yeah, I have a friend that just had like it has this song out, came out a couple weeks ago with like a massive superstar, and he produced it. And I was like, what was it like recording her vocals? And he's like, I have no idea. You should just send me some. I just got an email, and they said it was good. The production was good, so that was it. But yeah,
I was really excited until you said her vocals, because I was like, wait, a massive superstar. Did your friend produce the new Shaggy and Sting reggae album?
I don't know anyone who's involved with that. I've heard he's a great guy. He takes like a lot of like, for some reason, I actually know why, but there's a lot of guys in the Brooklyn music scene. There's like a handful of guys that have toured with him as his band, or backup singers and stuff. And he's like apparently like the coolest. But
wow,
I don't know about that album though.
Cool.
Who's the deal?
To segue into our like end of the show plug segment, what's next for you? What is next for Andrew Horowitz?
Well, I'll tell you the next big release I have coming out that I was involved with, and it's an album by a singer named Coyle Gorelli, and he used to be in a band called The Shevin, and it is kind of like I produced it and it's like a Roy Orbison vibe. There's like a couple of songs out right now, but yeah, it comes out like probably late summer or early fall, and
awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a cool record.
Nice. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where, I imagine, I haven't checked out, I imagine you're on social media like most of us these days. Where can people find you? Where can they find your stuff?
Yeah, I'm on the Facebook, and I'm on everything. And I think my handle for most things is ADHOROWI, ADHOROWI.
Gotcha.
And yeah, go to my website is AndrewTheProducer.com, which is easy to remember.
Nice.
Yeah. But,
I just remembered one more thing. So that Rob Cantor and you playing piano, that video of the fake celebrity impressions thing.
Yeah.
I was reading that the video has 17 million views, but the video explaining how it's not real has 2.7 million views. How do you feel about the fact that like 12 million people don't know
that is fake?
That it's yeah.
They're living their best life. They think it's real.
12 million people are like, this guy is crazy. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I know. It worked out. We covered ourselves, and now, all good. Yeah, we honestly didn't think more than 50,000 people would watch it, and
that's kind of funny.
Yeah, it exploded overnight. I literally woke up and I had 100 text messages and 10 missed calls, and it's like, hey, this is CBS. Is it okay if we use this? Stuff like that, and yeah, it was pretty wild. But yeah, Rob had a vision and he executed it very well.
Nice. Well, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for coming on the show. We started plugging. I derailed it. Yeah, you can find Andrew Horowitz on just a number of tracks. If you go to his Wikipedia page, you'll find it to be the densest of any of our guests. So you're killing it, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I went the whole episode and I didn't do it, but I'm gonna geek out now. I saw you guys. I saw you guys in Grand Rapids in 2010, Ann Arbor a couple times.
Cool.
I'm a big Tally Hall fan. I'm sorry, I just had to geek out a little bit.
No, thanks.
Wow, yeah, you geeked out so hard.
It's weird to think,
but
I'm super excited that you're on the show and you were willing to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For us, something old, something new, something borrowed, something brewed. You can still find us on Facebook at the full title. We're on Twitter and Instagram at SoSnSbSb podcast. You can be one of the 3 humans ever to email us if you want to at gmail.com. You can find me hosting the Stand Up on Tap at the Bell's Eccentric Cafe first Mondays of every month. Nick, you got anything coming up?
Nope, just producing this show and trying to find ways to make more shows, but that's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, listening. For us, I'm Andrew J. Pytel.
I'm Nick Lancaster.
Okay, I'm Andrew Horowitz.
we should have prepped for this. You're gonna say something borrowed in just a second.
Okay.
So, and this has been something old,
something new,
and something borrowed,
and something brewed. We'll see you on side B.
There's lots of pretty people here sharing sultries and passing letters in. There's lots of questions answered and metaphysical, astronomical songs, words printed all on papers that seem too mystical. It's so magical. People that dance and compute that no one's better than you. La la la, la la la, la la la, la la. There's kings in distant cities who rule their persons and make them happy, and we won't forget about the service or congratulatory. Even the animals know that something